Class example 1, the audit plan, and you've got 10 marks. So revenue, I automatically make a note, assertion level risk with regards to the occurrence because there is a fraud risk. We looked at that last week per ISA 240. In the financial statements amounts to a material 56,899,246 rand. Material, I know I have to do substantive procedures. I'm also going to note here, I missed this initially, because it's susceptible to fraud, significant risk, and if it's significant, substantive procedures. Management informed you that revenue is generated through the sale of motorbikes. Each transaction is authorized by the sales manager, so I've got an authorization control at the relevant dealership. On receipt of the signed delivery note from the dealership, so they've got a signed delivery note, authorization, the head office accountant inputs the details into Sage Online Accounting. So they use a computer information system. I've also got segregation of duties now because it's the head office accountant who inputs the details. I do just want to put a question mark here. Do they have access controls for inputting the details? Also want to make a note here. Is it pre-numbered, this delivery note? And the sale is generated. Sales managers receive a bonus if their sales target is reached. So I've got an assertion level risk here with regards to the occurrence of revenue because of the incentive, this bonus. And this also now brings about susceptibility to fraud. Is it a significant risk? Sounds like it. Required. Draft the audit plan for revenue for 10 marks. So I've got to draft the audit plan, which means I know I need to follow my 4 steps. What is the audit's approach? What is the nature based on that approach? What is the timing of my procedures and the extent of my procedures? I don't have heaps of information, but I can go about. Look, I see controls, there's authorization, there's segregation of duties. So I'm going to say, based off this, I would want to test the controls. Why? Let's put it under here. I would want to test of controls, perform test of controls under my nature. Let's put some reasons. Well, it's revenue, so there'll be a high volume. There'll be a high volume of transactions. Why else? There's a computer information system. So, substantive alone may not be sufficient. What else? It appears to be a significant risk. So I want to test them in the current year. And I'm not even going to mention now the 1 in 3 prior year. There's no discussion around being the auditors in the prior year. So I can't assume that I was and therefore can use information in the prior year. But what else do I want? Well, it's a value add for the client. And because they have controls, I can do it. So, I've put some reasons there for why I'd want to. It's enough for me to then come back and say, I'm going to follow a combined approach. Why? Because there are controls that I want to test, that I think will be valid and reliable and working. Because I've now said that, I have to now go and discuss the substantive procedures. Because my nature needs to address both. And I need to say it is a material account. Therefore, I have to perform. And it appears to have a significant risk. I need to justify the type of substantive, so I will say I will perform analytical and test of detail. So I've now given the nature of the combined approach procedures. Test of control, substantive procedures, and substantive are split into the two. The timing, I'm going to say, I'm going to come in at year end because there's a fraud risk associated with revenue. And there are lots of controls that I want to test, so I'm just going to say that I must test the controls throughout the period. The extent, I'm going to say there's an increased risk of material misstatements. Why? Because there's the fraud risk and there's the bonus based on targets. So because of that, I want to decrease materiality. I'm going to perform more test of controls, and if they are effective, I will do more analytical and less test of detail. That's only if the controls are effective. If they are not effective, I will go with more test of detail. So can you see there, guys? I only needed a little bit of information to come up with my approach. And then, once I've got the approach, discussing the nature, timing, and extent is pretty simple. Let's have a look at the solution. You've got your combined approach up there. Because they've got controls in place, the nature, test of controls, and substantive are going to be the two. They've got an online system, so substantive alone might not be sufficient. Then revenue, we've got the fraud risk, and there's another incentive, so it's a significant risk, which means we must, I never discussed this first, gain an understanding of the control activities because it's a significant risk, and then test them in the current year and perform substantive. What is missing here is that revenue is a material account, and therefore substantive must also be performed. Then, just some example, inspecting for authorization. Using CATs, also missed that, because they've got a computer information system. So two things when there's the computer information system. CATs and the fact that substantive alone might not be sufficient. And then maybe an expert. In terms of your testing, controls will be performed at interim because there's a high volume. Question mark there. Test of controls throughout the period. Substantive at or near year end due to the fraud risk. Guys, so it's actually acceptable then if you had said test of controls also at year end. The standard does, however, say that you might pick up risks if you do test at an interim stage, but you can go at year end rather. And then incorporates unpredictability because of the fraud risk. Extent, increased sample size because of the fraud risk, decreased materiality, more test of controls, less test of detail, so you'll do more analytical, less test of detail. And then, because there's a bonus, maybe I'm going to place less reliance on management rep leader if their integrity is lacking to get the bonus. So look at that, guys, 23 available, but you only needed 10, so you didn't have to go into too much detail around the nature. It's included there just so that you can see in case it's out of a lot more in future. Okay, so before we finish with ISA 330 and the audit plan, just to note that if you are doing a group, then the group auditors need to come up with an audit plan for the group as well as the significant components. Because, guys, the significant components are going to be consolidated into the group financials. So they need to also work towards an audit plan that's going to allow the group financials to come free from material misstatements. Okay, so your significant components will have their own audit plan for just the individual company, but then they will also have a group audit plan that they need to also consider in being able to report back to the group. The types of questions you get: identify the responses to the two different risks at the financial statement level and then at the assertion level. We've done them both. You've done a question on assertion level and you've looked at the standard responses at a financial statement level. So guys, it's quite simple the more you practice. Know the difference between the audit plan and the strategy. Well guys, now having done the two, you should see the difference. The strategy being getting that understanding of the entity and its environment so that you can determine materiality and the risks and then the resources. Whereas the audit plan is literally responding to specific risks at the assertion level. So a specific account will have this audit plan and a different account will have another audit plan. Okay, so the audit plan is for each account. It won't just be one standard audit plan. See you next week.